Good evening, everybody, and a very warm welcome to this first webinar in the scale-up phase of the Defra Future Farming Resilience Programme. My name's Greg Beeton. Some of you may have seen me before. I've led the last two phases of this project for Brown&Co, and I'm very pleased to be here leading this next programme over the next 2.5 years. So over the next 45 minutes, we are going to run through some slides of the programme. We've got a couple of videos from farmers who we've worked with over the previous phases. And then we really also want to try and encourage as many question and answers as possible, so we can get some feedback and try and answer as many of your queries as we can. We are recording this and we will show it on YouTube afterwards. And to encourage questions, we would like people to use the chat. Sorry, not the chat, the question and answer. If you go to the bottom of your screen, there should be a question and answer button. And if you click on that, you should be able to post a question, and we'll endeavour to answer that during this webinar as best we can. Any that we can't answer, we will reply to afterwards. There is also a chat function as well. And in the chat function, we will be posting some further documents and information as we go through. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide, please. So just to run through what we're going to do over the next period, we're going to just give you a slide on what the project's about, and then try and dig a little deeper in why we think it's important for farmers. We are then going to talk about some of our findings from the phases we've worked in so far, because I think that's really important in helping everybody understand what offers we've pulled together in this main phase. And we are doing this one very differently to how we've delivered the previous phases. We will then talk through how to sign up, what the process is, and then the floor is everybody's to ask as many questions as they can. But please do ask questions as we go through, and we'll try and answer them as best we can. Next slide, please. So for those who aren't aware, the Defra Future Farming Resilience Fund is a mechanism that Defra has put in place to help support farmers through the agricultural transition period. So this is the period between now and 2027, which covers the loss of BPS and basically the taking back of Common Agricultural Policy and the CAP regime back into UK government control. So this is the third phase of this project. There have been two previous phases, a pilot phase and then sort of a shorter term interim phase. And those phases were used to help define the content of the main phase. We've delivered, so Brown&Co has delivered about 600 farmers in the pilot phase and 750 in the interim phase, and we're now going for a much larger scale delivery in this main phase. So the main aims of the project are to help farmers prepare. I think becoming more resilient is the buzzword, but ultimately it means adapting to particularly some of the financial changes over the next 2 years. And it's also helping farmers understand and wade through the information that's out there, which is changing all of the time. So it's helping to give that support, helping to build farmers' confidence to make decisions. And ultimately, the overall ambition is for the UK agricultural sector to become more competitive, innovative and productive. There's also an element as well of supporting well-being, health and well-being, because we know there are some quite challenging times that some farmers are facing. Next slide, please. So why sign up? What is it that this project can help support farmers with? Well, the main aim was originally around the policy change. So thinking around the reduction of BPS, we know it's come down already from a high of £233 a hectare down to 187 this year. So it's a 20% reduction already. It's going to be half its value in 2024 and then reduced to zero by the end of 2027. Alongside that, there are new policy-led initiatives around ELM, which is going to be the public money for public good replacer for BPS, we hope, although we're not quite sure fully what's going on at the moment, but we can't see it really disappearing. It's going to be there in some way or form. And there's also various new schemes to help support technology adoption, farmers to become more productive and efficient, to try and do things such as reduce some of the labour burden, because we're very conscious that labour markets have been very fickle in these times. So that's what the scheme was originally for. But then, in the last 12 months particularly, we've had a whole lot of external shocks coming along. These around markets, uncertainty around markets, output prices. We've had a real hike in input prices, particularly fuel, nitrogen in the last 12 months, not looking to go away anytime soon. We've then got the more recent increases in cost of borrowing, where there was talk of interest rates moving up, base rates to 6% by next June. That's going to have a huge impact on farm borrowing cost. And alongside that, we've got new technology adoption, which is designed to help mitigate some of these external shocks. This alongside, from a farmer's perspective, personal journeys around succession and thinking about diversifications. And then we've got the weather on top. So all of these things that come together, creating in some ways a bit of a perfect storm for farmers, in addition to that was planned through policy change. So in the next slide, we're just going to look a little bit more about some of our findings. And this really has helped inform how we've designed this main phase. So we learned, and we've looked at who we worked with in the previous phases of the project. So we know that we've worked with a whole range of farm types, all farm types across all of England. We're going to continue to do that. And in fact, we're going to push more north and south in our ambition this time. We know that roughly 50% of the farmers that we work with had livestock. We know that 52% of the land that we work with, this is across that interim phase of 750 farmers, 52% of land was tenanted. We know that roughly a third of farmers were at the older end of the working spectrum. 32% were 65 or older. And this has really informed the audience that we have been working with. We do think this audience is going to continue to require the support going forward, but we're also designing it for farms that have probably more scale and more complexity to them. And I'll talk more about that in a sec. So the next slide has got some other findings from our interim project. And this really looked at some of the stats around how farmers are thinking and trying to make changes and adapt. So we know that 86%, so a huge proportion of farmers, know they need to make changes in the next 3 to 5 years. So change is coming. But 34%, so a much lower number, had started to actually do anything about it. So there is a gap. There is an opportunity to take up support in this project to try and change a desire to some action. We also know that the impact of BPS loss, which represents 68% of the profit of those 750 farms, is going to be quite significant, a gap to fill. When we started to look into a little bit more detail, and again, this informs our interventions, we know that roughly 4/5, 80% of farmers are looking to make changes over the next few years when it comes to family planning and succession, probably driven by the older demographic, but that succession could be passing on to the next generation, and we're building in opportunities for younger farmers in this phase. So there'll be quite a lot of generational change, some planning to leave, but also a considerable portion thinking about farming land in different ways. So working with others through contract farming, share farming, or other options too. Quite a proportion think that they may have opportunities for buildings and land to create additional income or capital. And again, that could be something that could be taken up, and we've put one of our interventions together to address that as well. And we've also seen quite a rush towards environmental schemes. Significant proportion of farmers are in some form of stewardship at the moment. These have been fairly low barriers to entry, and we think that's going to continue as those schemes increase in opportunity, breadth, and we start thinking about the new levels of elm starting this year. and growing as we move forward. So the next slide is of a farmer, Arthur Whitaker, who we work with in Cambridgeshire. Arthur is an arable and a livestock farmer, and this just captures a conversation of Arthur with one of our delivery advisors.
We're finding that it's getting too much for us now, so we've got to try to keep it going with less assistance from ourselves.
What did you want to get out of the interim phase of the FFR programme?
I wanted to, because I'm getting older and my wife's is the same age, and we thought we've got to come to somebody to find out how we can make this small farm still exist, you know, and carry on. And so that's why I came to Brown&Co and to get different options on what's the best way to go forward. Because with a BPS getting smaller and then eventually back, and I thought, well, we've got to do something else, we won't make any money at all.
So those are some few comments from Arthur, and Arthur took up the advice and actually made some significant changes to his farming business as a result of the Brown&Co support in the last phase. And we do hope that we can continue to do something with Arthur in this main phase of the project. So this question, so this slide now just is an overview of Brown&Co, and we are just showcasing where we sit and where we are going to operate in this project. So we have offices throughout the sort of the eastern, northern, eastern, central part of the country. We're also working with a project partner in the southwest this time so that we can get more localized coverage down there specific to some interventions. One thing I'd like to point out from this slide that I think sets our offer apart from others is that we do have teams of specialists within the organization. So we have a whole professional contingent of land agents who can offer detailed advice on tenancies and planning. We've got a team of planners who, again, are qualified professional planners. We've got teams of environmentalists, and we also have, obviously, teams of our agribusiness consultants who major in the economics and finances of agriculture. Next slide, please. So this diagram captures what we're offering this time. And I think the main point to take away from this, and I will go into each of the circles in further detail in the next few slides, is that we are offering choice. So in our original projects, we've really offered a business review, which has been great for signposting going forward. But we now realize that farmers actually want more detailed information. And so we are offering more detailed interventions that could naturally follow an initial business review, or farmers might decide they want to go straight into some more detail. And so in total, we've got 6 focused interventions, an overall business review, and then we're also running some support activities as well, which is going to include group meetings, it's going to include sharing of case studies of farmers, and it's going to also include providing content via our new Brown&Co website that was launched yesterday or the day before. So let's move into, and we're going to share this through the chat function, this slide, so that everybody can have a look at it in their own time. And that link should be going on now. I should say that I've got 4 of the core team members here sitting with me, and we'll be sharing various articles as we go through. Okay, so let's think about more detail in these interventions. So the next slide, please. So this slide, really, slide 0, we're calling it, is just to demonstrate that we're still offering the overall business review that we offered last time. And this is an overview, an oversight of a business. It looks at resources, it looks at finances, it looks at ambition, And it really sets the scene with farmers as to where they might go next. Now, we see this as being an option for new people coming to us, people who want an overview view, but it can also offer a springboard to a more focused intervention. So these business reviews will often focus, and this is, I think, where some farmers certainly felt rather frustrated in the previous phase. They wanted more. This time we can offer more, and this could be the springboard for that. So this is the overview. And over the next 2.5 years of this project, we see and think that actually this overview is likely to change as new schemes, new policies change. So we'll keep upgrading this as we move forward. So now let's move into these 6 focus interventions. And I should say that all these interventions are designed around 1 day of support. And that day can be split between preparation, on-farm, or analysis and follow-up afterwards. So this one looks at budgeting and business planning. And there are 3 parts to this. And again, there is a choice here. And each of these parts A, B, or C will take around a day. So a farmer can choose A, B, or C. There may be options for a bit of a mix between them, but to do them properly, we believe each of them will take the day. So the first one is looking at budgets, and we're producing a future farm resilience budget as part of this program. And this is going to look at producing net margin profit. We think this is important because generally accounts analysis tends to be historical, and with such fast moving changes in the sector, we think that a review and analysis of where farmers are in the current year is really important. So it will produce that net profit in the current year. It will also look at source and disposal of funds, and cash is really important at the moment, particularly with any changes in requirements for overdraft facilities, changing as input prices increase, but also as the cost of borrowing increases as well. It's something to keep a very clear eye on. And we're also looking at fixed costs. So that's an analysis of the present. We're also then under part B offering a look forward. So this one is actually saying, if we want to design new enterprises, look at new diversifications, thinking about how we plan for change, let's have a look at that. Let's look using partial budgets to look at the opportunity for change. And this will produce a net result that basically says there's a positive net for change. These are the things to think about. Let's think about how we finance it. Capital, let's think about how we might produce a bit of a business plan to actually take for further financing. So that's forward-looking and can be applied to any kind of diversification. And then the third option here is looking at net margin comparisons. And this was something that certainly in the interim phase, in the many farmers that I work with, one of the things that came up time and time again was trying to get a better understanding of the different performance between enterprises. And in an enterprise mix, there could often have been some enterprises that were underperforming, some that maybe could be substituted by environmental income streams and the like. But until there was a breakdown by enterprise and apportioning overall costs, that was a very difficult decision, a very difficult analysis to make. We're going to do that now in detail in this next project. So those are the budgeting ones. The next slide is looking at opportunities for collaborations. So again, core agricultural skills, looking around how technology can be adopted. So thinking around how technology can reduce costs, efficiencies, productivity, help save labor, and thinking how grants, as they come up, could be aligned with this. So we know that the new grant rounds are like the grant rounds that were there before around small equipment and technology, around the productivity grants, are likely to come round again, likely to come out again this autumn through to next spring. So, and who knows beyond that. So this could be an opportunity to think about how technology could be aligned with accessing grant funding as it comes. The second choice in here is looking around benchmarking. And this is probably particularly focused on arable and root crops. And again, we had quite a lot of feedback last time that farmers want to understand how they sit against their peers, how they sit against other farmers. Where are they strong? Where are they not so strong? And so thinking about how we can pull together benchmarks for individual farms is going to be on offer. The next option looks around collaboration. And there's a lot in here for collaboration, but collaboration can cover things like choices for land. You know, is the choice of land to rent it out, to farm it in-house, to think about entering a contract farming agreement, a share farming agreement, thinking about collaborating at scale with machinery and machinery labour sharing groups. So there's a whole raft here of analysis that can be done. And this is something that we're covering really in C, and then to more extent in D. So trying to think about how planning for collaboration, ultimately to reduce costs, is something that can be delivered through this intervention. So the next two interventions, if we can move on to the next slide, is looking at some of the skills that we can bring through our land agency and planning colleagues. So back to the feedback and the analysis from the interim phase, we know that a lot of farmers thought they had opportunities for developing a building, thinking about planning permissions, thinking about maybe how field scale solar could be something that they could look at. Increasingly, we're likely to see a push for wind as well, coming back again in on-land wind turbines. And so this intervention really will run through a process of looking at screening and assessing local, the site, the surroundings, planning history, planning policy, and really coming up with, as well as mapping, and it will come up with a professional opinion and a way forward, or not as the case may be, and suggestions for next steps. The whole point here is to de-risk this process so that farmers can, rather than jumping in with something that might not go anywhere, can build up confidence that actually the next steps are ones that actually they want to enter into. And, we know that planning processes take considerable investment. So this is aimed to de-risk that. And we think there'll be quite a lot of uptake for this. And again, this is a service that's offered through our land agency and our planning teams. The next slide looks at natural capital, and this one is looking at some of the environmental options. Now, there's two sets of environmental options that we are looking at here. One is around environment and natural capital, others around greenhouse gas footprints. So this natural capital one, again, has got various sections to it. Two of them are quite specialised. So part A, we're going to look at how habitats can be assessed on farm. So this is designed to identify habitats and particularly enhancement potential. And this is very relevant as we start thinking, or some farmers might start thinking about opportunities for biodiversity net gain and offering land into the land bank. Will open up next year, and thinking about putting together portfolios of offers for what is a new income stream that wasn't around a number of years ago. And so that detailed habitat assessment using the biodiversity metric tool is something that we'll offer. We're also, again, under part B, looking at specialised offers for woodland. And this, again, will look at screening, mapping for woodland opportunities, and it will produce an assessment, an economic assessment of income, trade-offs alongside other land use options. It will produce a carbon calculator using the Woodland Carbon Code mechanism. So this is something, again, that can give farmers a very detailed perspective on whether woodland creation is for them or not. And then the third one is looking more broadly at environmental scheme options. Now, these have been underpinned by countryside stewardship so far, but we know things are changing. And we know that SFI has emerged this year with its two soil standards. We know there are other SFI options coming next year. And over time, there's going to be a greater assessment needed of how to maximize that mix on farm. And particularly also thinking about ambition levels, based on where farmers sit, where they want to go, what assets they might have, then we want to work with farmers to actually define that ambition, which will help their future planning on farm. The next option looks at greenhouse gas footprints. And this, if you like, is the new kid on the block. This is something that not many farmers will have in place. It is likely to be an increasing requirement going forward, as much driven by the supply chain, who are all looking towards reduce their footprints as we move towards net zero ambition by 2050. So what we're using here, we're using one of the online calculators, and we will be looking to produce baselines on farm. This is sitting with the farmer, using a farmer's input to produce that baseline. This will then tie in with a plan to reduce that baseline going forward. And the thing that we can bring to this is an understanding of the economics on farm and how this will affect the other parts of the farming operation. We then want to recast that baseline to understand how the effects of changes, and there will be some easy wins and some not so easy wins in there, will move the baseline going forward. The other thing that we will start looking at then, as well as reducing emissions, is how sequestration, carbon capture, can be incorporated. Now, this primarily around soil, but to some extent reverting back to the previous slides around woodland as well. We're not going to get into huge detail on the soil side of things, as probably everybody's aware. There's still a lot of discussion going on it. We expect the minimum standards to be launched this year within the UK Soil Carbon Consortium. But we'll start thinking about what are the measures, what's the operational practice that can increase that sequestration in soil. And thinking also how that could reduce input costs and overall farm net margin. And the final intervention looks at working with tenants. Now, we've always been very strong in our projects in working with tenants, and working with those tenants, also some quite detailed conversations with the Tenant Farmers Association. We've put together, if you like, a package here that allows tenants to really use our qualified land agents to understand and pick choices and options that actually would benefit any tenant in any particular situation. So this one doesn't have so much of a blueprint. Really, it's a range of discussion points, any one of which, or combinations of, that can be picked up. So it covers things like succession planning, thinking about how diversifications can be maximized with landlords, thinking about working constructively with landlords going forward, maybe to increase length, security of tenure, thinking about joint investments. And also, as we move forward, and it becomes a little bit clearer how some of these new natural capital options could be assessed and incorporated, moving with the times on that. So really, we think there's something here that can go into depth to support tenants on specific issues. So those are our 6 interventions that, as I say, can be aligned with, or alongside, or after, or instead of the overall business review. And we've just got another little video now of another farmer we work with, Sarah Footit, who's a livestock farmer in Warwickshire. And we've produced a video that captures her thoughts on what she received from Brown&Co last time.
So, could you just give us an idea of the key outcomes of working with Brown&Co through the interim phase of the Future Farm Resilience?
Well, you have provided me with the ability to see the wood for the trees, quite literally. It's not just about carrying on and doing what we've always done and doing it a bit differently, slightly better animal husbandry or whatever. This is once in a lifetime business decision for a small landholder, and it's not something that I felt confident that I could, a decision that I could just take without accessing some professional advice. We are being required to think about land in completely different ways, and there's an awful lot of information out there. With the best will in the world, you get to the end of reading one bit and you can't remember what you've read over there, and then you think, well, have I understood it? Have I not? Have I missed something? And it's not. You do need to test your understanding with somebody who's got a more extensive knowledge base to check that you're not getting it wrong, because you could make a really big mistake otherwise.
Thanks. So that was Sarah just setting out, I think, that she feels the process very, very worthwhile. And again, there's an example in Sarah of a farmer who's going to take up further, more detailed option within the next part of this program. So how does the process work? So this is just a run through how we see it working. So first of all, we have a team here as a central project team who are very open, willing, happy, enabled to answer any questions that you may have. So please feel free to call in, mail in. We will get back to you in a very short period of time and try and meet as many of your needs and questions as we can, because we want farmers to basically sign up and to start this journey with us. So the initial part of the process is to register. This could be through email, through the website form. It could be phoning in. And part of that process then is collecting various information that we need to get people signed up. The most important thing we need is the single business identifier number, the SBI, because that then enables the place with Defra and the project to be secured. So that's the first part of the process. Then we move into some more detail where we start thinking about ensuring farmers are aware of the choices available and thinking about which ones are most beneficial for their particular business. We've talked through the choices. We're asking farmers to indicate early on whether they know which ones are going to be for them. But we're very happy again to put more detail to that and to help walk farmers through some of those choices. We then move, and that is partly by the core team and then partly also by the professional advisor who would be assigned based on the choice the farmers make and the geographic location in which they sit. So we then move into the on-farm phase. But one important point I want to make is that there's a set amount of time, if you like, available for each farmer, and it really is down to farmers to make use of that time as effectively as possible. And certainly, I know from last time, the more preparation in information that can be shared before the on-farm meeting, the much more effective those on-farm meetings were. So we'll be looking to encourage as much sharing. In some instances, where we're looking at maybe some of the planning options or some of the options around some of the environmental schemes, we can do a chunk of screening before we even sit in front of the farmer, and that makes those on-farm meetings much more efficient. So we will be pushing that. We will be enabling that through information provision as well. So we then will arrange a meeting. There will be an on-farm meeting, and our model is totally around on-farm face-to-face support. So that's our model. We know from all the feedback we had last time that the majority of farmers found that the most effective way of working. And we're going to drive down farm drives all over England to deliver this. So after that meeting, and the meeting, again, usually most effective when there are other members of the family there, so that we can get as much input and experience into that session as possible. And then after that, there will be reporting. We want particularly this time to strengthen the sort of KPIs, the benchmarking, the areas where farmers can look at and see how they might compare against sector standards or against others, because I do think that will be really helpful. And again, we got asked that question a lot last time. Then the process will finish with follow-up. And then, and this is, I think, something that we can offer in our interventions, is that some farmers, and this again is subject to needs, subject to demands, there will be options to have a second intervention over the course of the project. So the project runs until March 2025, and it could be that those second intervention could come at some point before that time. So one thing I think to emphasize in our model here of delivery is that whilst we're really looking for farmers to sign up as soon as possible, and the reason is because once you've signed up, then we can start then sharing information with you and bringing you sort of up to date with all the stuff that we're doing in the project before you might then have your particular intervention. So you can sign up today, tomorrow, and you might say, actually, I don't want to see anybody until next year. That's fine. And that actually is going to work well for some farmers who might have a particular event that's happening, you know, a succession, a particular end of a tenancy or something that doesn't happen immediately. So it's not a rush straight away. There's time in this project, and we've got that luxury over the next 2.5 years. But I would encourage people to sign up now as soon as possible so that we can incorporate you in our numbers and we can start planning with you. So the next slide sets out what farmers get, and this is just to confirm some of the outputs that we're offering farmers. So as we've said, there's a full day, a good full day, a long day of support per intervention. Part of that is split into an on-farm meeting, part of that is preparation beforehand, analysis and the like. And the type of reporting that you might expect to get, it might be reporting in detail around your greenhouse gas footprint and your carbon balance. It might be the business review report with recommendations and signposts. We're trying to include much more mapping this time, because I think mapping, and this is an example using the Land app, is very helpful when planning land use change. It might be around environment, it might be around screening. So we're going to use that. And then we're also going quite large on the financial details in the analysis that we can offer as well. So there's a range here of outputs. Again, flexibility and choice is something that we want to emphasize. We are trying to ensure that farmers get what they want out of this project, not something that, if you like, is too standard. And we're very happy to work with farmers on that, providing we can deliver it within the time allocation that we have. Okay, so the next slide is just on how we sign up, and then I will run through some questions that we've had raised. So just to look at sign up process, email, telephone, or through the website link. Do call us, do talk to us. We do encourage people to sign up as soon as possible. These webinars go into greater detail across all of our interventions. So the next one's going to be looking at finance, the next one after that in November on environment and greenhouse gases, then tenants in November, and then planning beginning of December. So we'll put that in the chat. We're also going to share in the chat some more detail of our offer as well, which we'll just put the documents up there now, and I think Bonner or Charlotte will put those up. And I will run through those, but do fire in the questions, and we will aim to reply to those via email. When we send out the link to the YouTube recording, we will put those on there as well. So, questions. So the team are throwing questions at me here. So let me look at the first one. So the first one is one around location, and it's asking a question about signing up for an intervention, but you don't think you've got a local Brown&Co office. So I would say to that, do not worry. We have demonstrated that we've worked across the whole of England in the last phase. We are very mobile. We've got our advisors and consultants basically come from all over the country. And so we've got a lot of local knowledge. And I would say this time as well that we have a land agency and planning firm in the Southwest that we're working with for some of those more localized questions. So the answer is very much yes. We will be with you wherever you are. The second question, which is one that we thought we'd get asked, which is around how many interventions can you sign up for? So we are offering, everybody can have a one intervention, and a significant proportion could have a second intervention. Let's just play it by ear and see what the uptake is. Don't be afraid to put down a preference for a couple of interventions, because that will help us to plan what we offer and how we resource going forward. And 2.5 years is quite a long time. And so who knows, what's around the corner, and we'll see what we can do to meet demand from farmers. So there's another question here about a deadline for signing up. This question is, the farmer's keen to get involved, but are going through significant change, and now is not quite right. Well, I think that's a very fair question, and I'm sure that will apply to quite a lot of farmers, particularly in busy periods. So I would say, as I said earlier, get yourself signed up. We'll engage with you. We'll start sharing information, and then please tell us then when is the most appropriate time for you to receive your support and input. And that could be different for every farmer. There's a question here about the range of specialisms, and does Brown&Co outsource? Well, the answer to that is a very clear no. And I think one of the areas that we think we can bring that is a real USP for Brown&Co is that we have in-house all of these professional specialisms. So that means that we can bring a planner, we can bring a land agent, we can bring an agri-business specialist, we can bring a budgeter, to your farm to help deliver the most appropriate intervention. Yeah. And from a perspective, from my perspective, running the project, it also means that we can schedule, we can have full control, we can look at quality, we can ensure that delivery is as it is supposed to be. So I think that's something that we're very proud of, and we really think will bring a big benefit to farmers in the project. So there's a question here about participating in the last phase of the project and the FFR project, and thinking about if you worked with the other providers, and there are other providers out there. I'm sure that there will be other people advertising what their offers are. There is some competition out there for the project. So what we're saying, and the others will say as well, is that this project is very different, separate from the previous project. If you work with somebody else, please do come and see what we offer, and we're very pleased to work with you in this project. So yes, separate project. So regardless of what support you had last time, you can have support this time. There is a question here that may come up over time, and I've just got 2 more questions I see that we've got here, which is around people who change their mind. So the process with Defra is that we need to lodge your SBI number with Defra, and that's so that the levels of support per farmer are managed so that farmers can't have multiple levels of support, and ultimately that would deliver an increased spend per individual farmer. So as part of the process, we log with Defra. Now, ultimately, if any farmer, whether it be us or another provider, if that farmer changed their mind, providing they did not have, or they had not received any of the intervention, then there is no reason, subject to Defra approval, why they could not change. Obviously, we and others, I'm sure, don't wish that to happen, but we believe that's the case, the project will work. The second last question I can see here is around harder to reach farmers and those that don't have good internet connections and the like. And I would say there that yes, please do contact us. We're providing means to contact us through post as well as phone, and we will go our way to reach every farmer. That's something we did last time. We're committed to that. We believe that this should be open to all farmers, and we want to deliver to as many as possible. I should have said we have a target of delivering 2,800 interventions. So that's probably working with around 2,000 farmers over the next 2.5 years. So we have got plenty of options for farmers to work with us. And the last question here is around money. And that's probably not surprising. So this question is around, is this fully funded by Defra? So the answer to that is that every intervention we deliver, that we will deliver within the time allowance, the good day of time that we have within the project, is free. So that's provided by Defra, and we will make sure that we can deliver those interventions in that time. We want to be as flexible as possible, and that comes back to my point about being as efficient as possible with our time. Beyond that is not funded by Defra, and that's a conversation with farmers if further support were required. That is obviously subject to discussions and how we see the project developing and the ability to offer maybe a second intervention to a significant proportion of farmers. Okay, that I think is the end of the questions that I have. I'll just look at the team here. Any other questions? No? Okay. So thank you all very much for listening. We will put these questions and these answers online. We'll link it and send it out via email, as well as any other questions that you do or the participants do send in. Thank you all very much for listening. We're really excited about this phase of the project. We're kicking it off. We're live from today. And please do feel free to join us for any of the other webinars that we're running over the next few months. And please spread the word as well. We're looking to work with and to support the sector as best we can over the next 2.5 years. So thank you all very much, and we look forward to hearing from you. Do sign up through the links available. Give us a call tomorrow, email us tonight, use the website. Thank you all very much.